This is clip 10 of our sequence, and we are going to just look at the complete sequence and the final results. We've mentioned that we have trauma in the system that affects the free flowing of energy, and that energy gets stuck, and that then develops a coping configuration leading to a particular coping style, leading then to the expression of inter and intra-translators. Intra-translators, once again, is chronic discomfort in the body, and inter-translators is chronic discomfort in relation to my external world. Things like I never feel good enough, or life sucks, or you cannot trust people, or relationships don't work, or I never end up number one. It's a repeat of discomfort. We've spoken about the fact that that's a psychobiodynamic healing script, and what we find is that the moment we have stuckness, the amount of stuckness in the system or trauma indicates the amount of compromise of the free-flowing energy within that system. And so the moment there is a compromise of energy, there is a natural process of compromise of boundary. In other words, if I have been penetrated with trauma, it means that penetration causes energy to be on hold, so there's less energy available for normal boundary, and so my boundary becomes more penetrable. When boundary is being penetrated and there is stuckness in the system, there is a sequence that unfolds that we refer to as the spike. Now, of course, the coping configuration and the intra and intertranslators are part of the whole sequence of the spike. But it goes that in the following manner, that the system goes into a high and a low and a high and a low. And those highs are pushing against my so-called ceiling within myself to try and find that lost boundary. And of course it goes down into that lowest bottom to try and find that boundary. And so the spike pattern, the up and down, or the long ups and the long downs, are indicative of stuckness or trauma in the system. So treating spikes or treating the inter and intra translators would be to close the messages of the translators, and they cannot translate the information that we have trauma. And therefore we are saying, do not treat the so-called translator or dis-ease. Look at the cause and use them as pathways to spontaneous healing. When we do that, when we go and we create that healing space, we actually allow that energy to unfreeze, which would mean it would go into that state where the system is now activated. And so we have the typical fight-flight mechanisms happening, and you have all those other discomforts in the system. And we have ways of doing that in SHIP. And through that, the system would then eventually revert back to that place of balance. Now, what's important here is when you are excited and you are allowed to release that energy, that is back to homeostasis. And this excited state is the state that we call an allostatic state. If that's not allowed to release and it goes through this whole sequence, we have information in the system now that is called an allostatic load. And if it goes through this whole process and then eventually back to balance through a process such as SHIP, we say that you have now learned a lot. So you cannot be like the original part because some evolution has now taken place. You've learned a lot, and therefore we say it's not homeostasis but heterostasis, which is growth that has taken place. And that's positive because it puts you up on a higher level of integration. And so we climb these steps in life towards self-enlightenment. And so when you follow the whole sequence and you use a process such as SHIP, which is focused on psychobiodynamic space to release and integrate and rebalance, you can live your life to the full. There are two things in life that are really, really important. The one is to create the best potential space for children to develop themselves. And of course the other thing is for you to live your life to the full, because again, that's the potential that life has given you. And besides rearing children in a very positive process, the biggest gift that you can give back to life is to live your life. Thank you.